so.
Okay.
YouTube, Ken
I'm gonna
Peplowski.
I'm gonna turn my phone off.
Okay. I saw last time I saw with the duo. I started with the duo with you and Diego.
Ah,
Just, you know, it's great.
well,
So
thanks.
I'm going to do that again.
Written by a man
And
who played
hello, everybody.
trombone with Duke Ellington, One Tizol. This is called
Okay,
Caravan.
I'm doing a little cutting and pasting, as you all pretty much know. Fantastic.
So those.
Okay. Okay, that's a great way to start, ladies and gentlemen. This is my special guest, Ken Peplowski.
Hey,
Ooh. There we go. Okay, now I'm set up, Ken.
all right. I'm so happy to be here.
So nice of you to be here. And last night, for those of you lot, Ken wasn't here. I mean, we tried to have him here a few weeks ago and he wasn't. So I played a lot of Ken for about 45 minutes. And
Oh,
yeah, it was fun. I mean, might as
so
well.
my whole scheme worked then. Yeah,
Right, it's not just the dog.
yeah, that's right. That's Corky, incidentally. Uh, he's a little rescue, not a little. He's 45 pounds. And I told Cathy before we went on air, Corky, anytime I do a promotional video for a gig, this guy gets more hits than I will have by myself in my entire lifetime. It's amazing.
I love it. I have to figure out how I can do
Mm.
that. Right now, I only have feral cats, so
Oh, well,
I need to
yeah,
upgrade.
they'll just run. Yeah, the Corky will, if I just give him a treat, he'll just stay there. So that's, you can't do that with a cat. I've had cats, so I understand.
Yeah, cats are definitely a different breed, right?
Yep.
My husband loves cat videos, and there's a million of them on. So sometimes I'll hear him screaming with laughter, and that's why.
Uh,
He especially likes when they jump up and back, when
yeah, well, that never gets tiresome, actually. I just saw a video of I don't know how rigged this was, but it was called Family Portrait, and it was two big dogs, and then a third big dog came carrying the family cat, plopped them right down, and then they all just stood, for the camera.
I guess that could work because there are some relationships that are outside the box.
Yeah, even
Speaking,
even amongst musicians.
I was just going to say, speaking of outside the box relationships.
Yeah.
Well, um, one thing that jumps out at me, which I just find interesting, is that you came up in a Polish community, right? And
Yes.
and your instrument was really important in that community. I have another friend, I don't know if you know her, Janice Borla.
Oh, I don't think we've ever met. Of course, I know about her. Yeah.
Yeah. So she also grew up in a Polish community and she studied uh, accordion.
Mm.
I mean, big time. She went to college for it, and it was really significant. I think that's interesting when I hear about that. Do you know other people who have experienced that as well?
Yeah, I have run across people over the years, especially in that the Polish polka music. Believe it or not, I've told this to lots of musicians. There's a lot of similarities between that music and traditional jazz because even the songs have kind of three or four parts to them, sometimes a key change, and the clarinet improvises a lot of the time while there's two trumpets playing in tandem, and
Oh,
it's that's how I learned how to improvise, just by kind of being thrown into that at 10 or 11. We had a band and we were playing weddings and dances, and so at first, you know, well, that music actually is the improvising is more. I don't want to get super technical for the listeners out there, but it's kind of arpeggio based. So it's based around just kind of playing mostly off of the notes of the chords. Whereas now, I mean, I try to play with a slightly more linear, straight
yeah.
approach, but it was great training. It was. And then we were also trying to play hits of the day and old standards, and, just taking requests and sometimes having to play songs on the fly that we never even rehearsed before. So it was the best training. And I did that all the way through college when I first went to college.
Yeah, that's a pretty rich history, actually. Yeah, it really is. I mean, I would say, probably at least 80% of the people I've talked to grew up in a musical family, or they were thrust into performing like that, when they were young. Me too. My dad was a sax player, and
Ah,
I had twin sisters who were 4 years older. One played piano. They both sang. So we would go out on gigs with my father.
yeah,
And
that's great. Where did you grow up, if I may ask?
Boston.
Oh, well, there's a rich musical community.
Yeah, very, very. So, but yeah, I would say, a large proportion of the people grew up in that kind of a situation. They were thrust into having to work.
Mm.
And um, I do remember coming to LA when I was about 21 when I came here, and I was weirded out that the musicians couldn't play something like Girl from Ipanema in a different key.
Right.
It was only the key. They were kind of sold on the keys, and I wasn't prepared for that, because in
Mm,
Boston, in my experience, you knew a song, you played it in every key, right?
that's very true. And for instrumentalists, I don't care who you are. There's some keys that will always be more difficult than others, but you're right, though. That's the way to learn a song is the best way to learn is at using your ear training and just kind of getting an oral AURAL sense and memory of the song.
Yeah,
So then you can just reposition yourself to whatever the new key is.
yeah. So I'm assuming that you probably learned how to read, like with your instrument first.
I did, but not that much earlier. I mean, it was kind of doing both things at once. And in that band, my brother played trumpet in that band too, 2 years older than me. And we had a piano downstairs in our house, and my father was an amateur musician. So, but I taught myself how to play piano, and I would write for the accordion player. I'd write the chords without knowing, okay, this is a C7, this is an F. I would just stack up the notes and write it like that.
Right, right.
And incidentally, speaking of Boston, you just reminded me of something that I'd forgotten about. I took probably from sixth grade and through junior high school. The Berklee School of Music had a correspondence course back then, which was really good.
Um,
Real basic music theory, and then they'd give you a set of chord changes, and you'd write a solo around it, and then you would get graded. They'd mail you back your grade in the next lesson, and that was very useful.
that's great. Yeah, my dad, I can't remember if he went there or it was very early, and it wasn't when he was really young. He was probably a young adult, and but didn't go there. And I went there. I went there for flute because they didn't have voice at the time.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
that when I left, the year I left, they got voice.
Hmm.
I just think that's interesting coincidence.
Hmm.
But yeah, Berkeley, yeah, it was really it that was really great then, because the school wasn't very big,
Ah,
and all the guys, Charlie Bianca, and all these guys, and forgive me, I always forget the guy. I don't know if you know this, the man who he was a woodwind player. He was very well known, or at least amongst professional musicians. He actually wrote the curriculum.
oh,
Do you know who
uh,
that was?
not John Laporta, was it?
John Laporta.
Was it really? Okay.
I don't know why I forget his name all the time, but John Laporta, and they even had, when I was learning stuff, they had a John Laporta half note.
Wow.
It had,
Wow.
like a little to do, like,
Yeah. Well, I know of him because he was a clarinet player.
yeah.
And there is a very famous recording which people can find, a broadcast, this crazy broadcast where they had Charlie Parker on and John Laporta. And then
I-
it might have been Dizzy or Fats Navarro, but it was a bebop band versus, as they did in those years, a Dixieland band. And they played each other's songs. So there is a recording of Bird with John Laporta doing the Tiger Rag, which I'm
Wow.
sure they could find that on YouTube.
I'm writing it down. For whatever reason, I looked up to him. I thought he was really cool. I guess he carried himself well and he was in charge of a lot of things and he probably treated the students really well, you know?
He has a great reputation. I spoke to him on the phone a couple times.
Yeah.
Uh, I think we just talked about playing the clarinet and things like that. But he seemed like a really nice guy. And there was another person who might have been teaching there when you went there, Alan Dawson, the great
Yeah.
drummer. And I got
Wow,
to work with
talk
him
about
a
a
lot.
sweetheart.
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah. And I mean, so many great drummers, when you start asking them questions, you find that they studied with him at one time or another.
I know that. Yeah. Yeah, beautiful, tasteful drummer and just yeah, the real deal. He was really a
Yeah.
great player and a very nice man. Yeah, I took with my flute, I took with here we go.
Uh,
Andy McGee.
oh, yes, of course. It's all coming back to me now. I had a method book of his also when I was younger. It was an improvising book. Then, when I was a kid, there weren't thousands of method books, about how to play jazz.
Right, right.
And so, you didn't have to, you could get the 10 that existed and learn a lot from them.
Right. As opposed to now, a
Oh,
thousand.
well, yeah. And actually, I think students sometimes get so confused. And if I do a master class, the first thing I tell them is, every book on jazz improvising is right in its own way and is wrong because there is no method. You take everything that you want to take from people's uh, interpretations of how to play jazz, and then you discard the rest. So, and James Moody, not to drop names on this thing, but I knew him pretty well, and he was such a sweet guy, and he would to to the end of his life, he was buying everybody's method books on improvisation just to check out what each person's approach was and how different it was. And then he would send the books to his fellow saxophonists, and I got some of them in the mail myself.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
he said the same thing. Just take what you want from these books,
yeah,
and because ultimately, as you have to form your own style
yeah,
eventually.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I remember finding this voice book. Each chapter was written by a famous classical or interviewed by a famous classical singer.
Oh,
And everybody had a different thing,
yeah.
which intrigued me, It was like, wow, okay. And now, I'm still taking lessons. I'm growing older. I have friends who take lessons and I listen and I experiment and now more than ever I realize, it's a very personal trip and your body reacts, your mind reacts in a really personal way and exactly what you said, you take what works and then you don't take, the rest.
Yeah, and uh, to add to your point, I think you should never stop learning as a musician. It's a never-ending process, and once you stop that, I don't think you'll grow anymore because there's so much out there, and not even just jazz. Listening to all kinds of music, keeping your ears open, you're keeping your brain open to different ideas. And again, like I said, you don't have to like everything, you don't have to agree with everything, but I think it's important to be open to whatever influences come your way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I also think that this is our job to in whatever we do, performances, teaching, whatever, of kind of sparking that in people listening you know, wherever that spark lies, it could be in the subconscious, but you know, that, oh, there's something about this that I crave and that makes me feel good and it inspires other things that I do. Yeah.
Yeah. That, there's, I could give a couple examples. Like I love listening to Ornette Coleman, and over the years, of playing, I've done some free jazz concerts, some more avant-garde things, but I prefer standards-based jazz. That's just my thing, and I just try to find my own way into that music. And I love John Coltrane, but I sound nothing like him. But I'm always listening to him. I listen to Michael Brecker, listen to all the post Michael Brecker saxophone players, just to keep my ears open.
Yeah. Yeah. And the clarinet, I mean, the clarinet is your biggest instrument, correct?
Yeah, yes, I would say that because first of all, it was my first instrument, and I took up the saxophone maybe a year later. And also, there's a certain pride amongst clarinet players because there aren't that many of us. There weren't, and there aren't. So it's like a little family. And so, yeah, whenever people ask me, which instrument do you prefer? I would say the clarinet. It's a more demanding instrument, kind of more unforgiving. And if it lets you know if you put it away for a few days, And the saxophone, I hate to say this, and I'll get angry messages from saxophone players, but you could get a little lazier on that instrument.
Yeah. Do you play flute as well?
You'll be happy to know I gave my flute away to a deserving student who needed a better instrument because I never got a good sound on it. So I didn't want to do any more harm to the music world. It if you think about the flute, well, you're a flautist, so it really shouldn't be a double. I think it was because the fingerings are kind of similar, but the embouchure is completely different.
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to producers and promoters trying to save money. And instead of hiring a flute player
Yeah.
and a clarinet player, they just have the saxophone players double on those instruments.
Yeah. Um, Hubert Laws lives out here, and from time to time I hear him. He played on my last album, a solo, and his sound. I mean, when you say it shouldn't be a double instrument, his sound is so strong and pure.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you could pick him out of any recording too.
Yeah, so quality.
Yeah. Yeah, but see, that's a real flute sound. And
Yeah.
that I was never going to get there, especially focusing on the clarinet. It's just hard for me anyway, it's hard to make those constant shifts.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I was going to talk about the clarinet because my dad also played clarinet, and so yeah, I just have always known that clarinet and soprano sax were two of the woodwinds that were kind of, everybody went, oh boy, yeah.
Right.
I'm really trying, but a great clarinet sound is really beautiful. Your sound is just really beautiful. It's just, yeah, it's beautiful music,
Oh,
too.
thank you. Uh, I had classical training, and I still to this day I practice mostly classical etudes
Oh,
on the clarinet. So I always thought one of my heroes, for example, was Jimmy Hamilton, who, for the people who aren't aware, played with Duke for
huh.
close to 20 years, maybe more. And he sounded like he could have come straight from an orchestra.
Hmm.
He had a beautiful, pure sound of the clarinet. And I always thought, why should you sacrifice your tone just to play jazz on the clarinet? That so many clarinet players and soprano players sound like snake charmers. The tone and the pitch just go right out the window. And I never got that. And some people, some older clarinet players, like some of the New Orleans players, that was just the way they played. But to grow up now and have an affected sound like an old, African American man that maybe lost half their teeth, frankly, which is the case with people like George Lewis, the great New Orleans clarinetist. That's I don't know. That's a little curious to me that you would go down that road. As the great original players were great, and but to hear people now come up and I hear the clarinet sound, and sometimes it's almost indistinguishable from a bad soprano saxophone sound.
Yeah.
They just I don't know what it is. They don't pay any attention to their pitch or their tone.
Yeah. The pitches too. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Um, clarinet has reeds, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Single.
um, is there a difference between clarinet reeds and a sax reed?
Well, yes and no. I mean, there's a difference in it's it would be a lot smaller than the saxophone. Even soprano saxophone reeds are slightly bigger than clarinet reeds, and they're cut a little bit different. They're made from the same materials,
Yeah.
uh, but clarinet, the embouchure, it requires a tighter embouchure and kind of a more fixed embouchure. So that's a lot of building up of muscles that you wouldn't use any other way. So, and the mouthpieces too, as opposed to saxophone mouthpieces, are smaller. So there's a less of an opening to push the air through.
Which is
So you
kind of harder, right?
yes, it is. So you
Uh,
have to learn how to concentrate the airflow. And just as an aside to you, the best thing I could have done actually was I took a couple of years of voice lessons when I was in college, and really learned how to breathe the right way and project the air and push that air through.
That's interesting because some of the singers that I admire the most played sax
Ah,
in high school. So I always think of it the other way around, like,
yeah.
the woodwind players have something down with the breathing. Actually, I interviewed Dave Liebman and he has a like a Indian breathing technique that he uses.
Hmm.
So I think he still works on that, keeping it up. Um, but breathing, yeah. And I've known some trumpet players who sing great, like Jack Sheldon. He
Oh
was
my God, yeah.
a great singer, and I really felt like it was tied into how he played trumpet, as far as the production, you know.
Yeah, I think you're right. And you never know where your influences are going to come from. And it all winds up in a big circle because in addition to studying voice, one of my biggest influences on phrasing and breathing was Frank Sinatra. And I saw him about a dozen times in concert and obviously watched all the videos and everything. And he sang almost perfectly. Like, he'd go from the bottom register to the top register, and there's no movement going on in the throat, and just kept an open throat, pushed the air from, down near the diaphragm, uh, but the ironic thing is he learned by watching Tommy Dorsey play because he would say, Tommy Dorsey could play the longest phrases and take breaths in the most unexpected places too, which Sinatra always did. He could breathe through, let's say, a sentence of a lyric and continue it into the next one, and then take a breath midway through there, so you didn't even notice the breaths.
Right.
And I'm not saying I accomplished that, but that's what I strive for when I play, especially if I play a ballad. I try to uh, take something from what I learned from studying the way he performed.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I my dad had I grew up on my dad's music first and foremost. So the singers he had were Frank Sinatra, Rosemary Clooney,
Hmm.
Judy Garland, Ella. I didn't really know about Sarah and Carmen for years, or Billy, you know, because I was just listening to my dad's records,
Yes.
They were such great singers, great phrasers.
Yeah.
And Judy Garland too, even though you
Oh,
would call her jazz, she definitely, had a real phrasing, a
oh,
phrasing that she took
absolutely.
off her honesty.
She did. I got to work with Rosemary Clooney quite a bit actually over the years because I was a regular sub for the saxophone of Scott Hamilton. And I have to say, obviously, we agree she was one of the great singers, but also so nice to work with. And she liked nothing more than hanging out with the band on the breaks, and just telling stories and listening to us. And she was such a wonderful person.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, definitely, I definitely know I got role models from these people, as far as my perception of them and how they felt to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really love that. And that's a good reason why I picked jazz to follow. Um, Joyce Glasgow says hello.
Oh,
Do
well,
you know her?
I do. Yeah. And please
She's
send my
in,
love. Or
yeah,
is she watching us now or
yeah,
listening?
she's been watching me for years, because I started in 2020 when the pandemic started. So yeah, she's been coming all this time.
Oh, nice.
And let's see, Frederic Loiseau is a really great jazz guitarist in Paris. He's here, and Mark Baldridge, guitarist, and Urs Weisendanger. Ken is such an amazing player. Thanks for interviewing him. The sound of clarinet is so unique. I'm sure that's also the reason why Claire Fisher wrote some incredible stuff for clarinet ensemble.
Oh, that's so nice. I
Yeah.
mean, actually, I wrote that myself. That's one of my pseudonyms, but yeah. No, that's so nice of him to say that. Claire Fisher, there's a guy, Gary Foster, who I'm sure
Yeah.
you know, one of the great doublers, and because every instrument he played, including the clarinet, n- never sounded like a double. Every time I heard him on flute, clarinet, alto saxophone, I thought, okay, that's his instrument. Wait a minute, that's his instrument. He was one of those.
Yeah.
But he had a close relationship with Claire Fisher, and they worked together a lot over the years.
Yeah, Claire was pretty amazing.
I never got to meet him. I worked with his son a couple times, but never Claire. And I wish I could have because such a great composer and arranger and everything.
Would have been fun. Um, he when I many years ago when I was in Switzerland once, there was a man who he owned a pipe organ, and he said, "Hey, I want to show you something." And what it was a recording of Claire on his pipe organ,
Ah,
just being Claire, not
well,
not doing any other kind of music, just being
yeah.
himself. And you could actually still get that. It's out. You could.
Oh, I've got to look for that. I,
Yeah,
I bet that's really great.
it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Claire Fisher on pipe organ.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I do. I was with Dick Hyman once in Blackpool, England, and they have a really famous organ there, pipe organ in this old ballroom. And Dick volunteered for this. They had a Blackpool Jazz Fest, and he volunteered to do an afternoon performance on that organ, and it was incredible, really amazing.
Oh my God, I can imagine.
Yeah.
What a stellar player he.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Covers the whole history of jazz, really.
Yeah, gorgeous, gorgeous. Um, I think the first time I was aware of him was in Woody Allen's movie Hannah and Her Sisters. There was they played You Are Too Beautiful,
Uh,
and I was mesmerized. I was like, who's playing that? Who is that?
yeah.
It was him. And that
Wow.
song, that was the first time I had heard that song too. What a pretty song.
Oh, it is. Dick actually, well, he got me on some of those Woody Allen movies,
Oh,
but beyond that, I mean, he when I first came to New York, which was 1981, he was one of the first mentors I had. He made it a point to find all the I was young then, all the younger musicians that were into playing standards, and also he would push us to do other things and got me on a lot of sessions. He really opened up a lot of doors for me. So lots of love to Dick. He's retired, permanently retired now. Doesn't want to do any more gigs, but he's still alive in his late 90s and living in Florida.
Oh, wow. That's so great. Wow. Amazing. So did you exchange clarinet ideas with Woody Allen?
Well, the funny thing is,
Or did you
he
play for him?
I did play clarinet. In fact, there was one movie with Sean Penn about a guitarist who's very influenced by Django Reinhardt, "Oh, Sweet and Lowdown."
Yeah.
So all that whole soundtrack, if people look for that, it's just improvising over songs that Django Reinhardt played. So there's a lot of me on that soundtrack. But Woody Allen on those sessions was almost painfully shy, as he is. If people to this day, if they go to see his band, I think they're surprised and maybe disappointed that he doesn't talk to the audience. But that's just the way he is. But he would come up to me on every session I did at some point and just pick my brain about the clarinet and what kind of reeds and mouthpieces. And he did tell me once that when he was a kid, he studied with Fats Waller's reed player, a man named Gene Cedric. So, you know, he's always been really serious about music and practices more than I ever have, every day. Uh, and I've just got one quick story about him the only funny story I have about Woody Allen. So he hired my quartet to play the premiere party for the movie Mighty Aphrodite. And he was in an unusually gregarious mood. So he comes up to me, goes, "Ken, I'm so glad you're here." And I can't do his voice. And I said, "Well, I'm glad you're here too. Did you bring your horn?" And he looks at me and he says, "No, your career is safe tonight."
Yeah, cute.
Yeah.
Um, Frederick asked, how is it to play and record with Hank Jones?
Oh, well, a dream. One of the all-time greats at the piano, and uh, you know, just a complete musician. I mean, he could read anything. He'd come up with great ideas. I had him on, I think, a couple records of mine, and I guested on one of his. And then we did some records when we did a couple tours of Japan together, and we did some records for some Japanese labels. And the Japanese producers, at least back then, they paid really well, but what went along with that was they made very strong requests that you kind of had to play, and
I can imagine.
sometimes they weren't the songs that musicians would really jump up and down about, like "Hello Dolly," and things, songs that have either been done to death or a little bit on the corny side. I don't mean, if somebody loves "Hello Dolly," my apologies, whatever, but Hank Jones would come up with, on the spot, would come up with the most brilliant introductions and endings. And the way his harmonic sense was, he made everything just turn into gold, And I've said this to other musicians too. You could just, at a sound check, he could just sit at the piano and just test the piano out and play a couple chords, and he had such a unique touch and a very delicate touch. Just from that, you knew it was him. So it was an honor to play with Hank Jones. At first, terrifying, but he was such a nice person too, and he would also try to trip me up sometimes. For example, I remember one tour of Japan. It was probably a month long, and we played a couple songs every show, and one of them was Body and Soul. And he would keep giving me alternate chord changes, and every night a different set of changes. And he'd look over and with this little sly grin on his face. And after a week of this, after the concert, I came up to him and I said, Hank, how do you come up with all these, alternate changes and, as we say, like 2-5-1, but different patterns, and you go far back in the song and it always comes out in the right place. And he looks up at me and goes, it's just mathematics, which of course, I mean, that's like coming from Albert Einstein, saying that,
Yeah,
So, and I think he was being very modest about that because he was a genius. He was.
he was a genius. As a matter of fact, speaking about Alan Dawson, so I was friends with Sam Most here,
Mm.
and one time when he and I were both in Japan, I went to see them, and it was Hank Jones and Ray Brown and
Uh,
Alan Dawson and Sam.
uh,
It's really
wow.
beautiful.
Great band. I knew Sam a little. I have a funny Jack Sheldon story involving Sam Most. Well, every Jack Sheldon story is
Yeah,
funny.
that's true.
But I did a gig with him in LA, and Sam Most came into the club. Now, Sam, you knew him, I'm sure, much better than myself, and real sweet guy, and really nice guy. He did in later years have one of those comb overs that started from way back, the
So
bottom,
true.
the base of
Yeah.
his skull, all the way up through the front. And he walks into the room, and Jack Sheldon said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to Sam Most, a guy who just walked 3 miles backwards through a hurricane." I mean, that's a great mind at work there to come up with something like that.
Yeah, that's very funny.
Yeah,
Yeah, that is speaks about Jack Sheldon
yeah, it
and
does. Well, yes, but yeah,
Sam Most, in his later years, he kind of, reminded you of a little gnome or something.
yeah,
He was kind of plump, and a little short, and then yeah, and then, he had that real kind of little personality,
that's
like,
right.
you know.
Yeah, he was a character in every good sense of that word.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and of course, Abe, his brother, was a wonderful clarinet player.
Yeah, that's right. The first time I saw them live, I was a waitress at Dante's in the 70s, and they had a night, and I was pretty blown away. I loved that flow of, quality. That was really where I was coming from with jazz and the jazz
Hmm.
that I was picking and listening to. But yeah, Abe was really great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know? You can answer me this question. Did Sam just only play flute? Did he?
Nope. He played
No.
sax, but he had a very he had a weird embouchure.
Hmm.
It's very loose.
Huh. Huh.
So he had a really airy sound,
Huh.
like on the sax, which was kind of weird,
Yeah.
you
I'm
know.
gonna now. After we're done, I'm gonna have to try to find something of him playing saxophone. You've got me intrigued by that. I've got to check that out.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you think about it, his flute playing did have a lot of air. I mean, not
Yes.
wasted, but that was his sound.
Yeah.
It wasn't
Almost
like,
like a tenor saxophone is subtone, as they call it. That very
oh
breathy sound. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, such a nice guy, really nice
Yeah.
guy. One time I was in Ireland I was on my honeymoon, and I stayed with this flute player, a guy named Red something. And I said, well, let's call Sam Most. I wanted to kind of connect them. And he was like, oh, okay. And it was 11 in the morning in LA. And he said, oh, no, he's not going to be awake. And I was like, it's 11 in the morning. He'll be awake.
Yeah.
No, he was not awake. He
Wow.
was the guy who stayed up all night. I don't know how Red kind of felt that. It was true.
Uh,
But yeah, Sam,
I'm
he was,
surprised he wasn't on his, fifth recording session by 11 a.m.
I know, I know. My mind kind of flashed over to Carl Saunders and he were really good
Oh.
friends.
Mm.
Talk about a weird couple, man, like
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Yeah. I can't even picture the two of them together, but yeah, there's a movie there somewhere.
There he is.
Yeah.
Well, Carl's one of those guys who has well, I don't know. I haven't hung out with him for years, but in the old days, he had a grumpy exterior
Yeah.
and a real soft interior. So I
Yes, you're
think
absolutely right. Yeah. Yeah. But what a player. I mean,
oh, God, yeah,
yeah.
so musical.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would actually do a lot of recordings together, like home recordings.
Oh no. Oh, love to hear those. Carl, once in a while, I don't just for whatever reason, I guess we were killing time. I worked with him a fair amount when I came out to LA, and he could sit down at the piano and play, really nice changes with good voicings on standards.
Absolutely. They used to do a lot of that in their hangouts. Forget whose house it was. Gosh, it was so long ago. There was a piano player singer who was involved, who's Pat Tutolino, something like
Hmm.
that. And I don't know whose house that was. I can't quite remember, but there were some hangs, and Carl would be at the piano, and he actually was quite a good pianist.
Yeah. You know
Yeah.
who else? If you've come across the tenor saxophonist Harry Allen, uh, it's the New York guy, but he
Ah,
he he plays great piano, and what
ah,
goes along with that usually, he's also a wonderful arranger for everything, big bands, orchestral things, small groups. He's got that kind of sense of harmony.
I'll have to go back. I interviewed him a few years ago. And I think after I interviewed him, I did a gig at that place in Delaware, Water Gap.
But yeah, the famous inn, the Deerhead Inn.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
he happened to be there the night before me, so I got to see him, and yeah, what a beautiful, beautiful player. And he wrote a few songs with Judy Carmichael, the
that's
Stradivarius,
right. Yes.
are really nice,
Yeah.
beautiful songs. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he's written some really nice originals. He wrote a couple big band arrangements for me that I still play when I guest with big bands. He wrote one on Just the Way You Look Tonight and Daydream. He wrote a nice arrangement of that.
Beautiful. Nice. That sounds great. Let's see. I have a few questions. Again from Urs. I feel Rob McConnell is also a very underrated arranger that included a lot of clarinet parts in his work. Some of the ballads Rob arranged are so strikingly in tune. Have you played with Rob?
I have, I had, he's no longer with us, but yes, probably because we were both on the Concord label at the same time. And Carl Jefferson, the guy who owned the label, he was kind of the last of those kind of Norman Granz type of record producers that would like to mix and match all the players that were under contract with him.
Yeah.
He put us out at festivals and things. So I did get to work with Rob in small group settings, never with his big band.
Oh,
And he had a very sardonic sense of humor too. He was pretty funny. Uh, and I don't know if he ever played. I always heard him play valve trombone. Uh, but yeah, I agree with that person who said that. A great arranger. Yeah, underrated. I would agree. He had a great fan base, but I think the majority of the public to this day probably doesn't know who he is, which you could say about a lot of
yeah,
musicians. Yeah.
that's true. Hey, I'd love to play something again. Do you have any particular thing? I mean, I dug this concert. When this concert was this just 6 years ago? Or
Yes, that was in. I remember that was in Portland, Oregon,
yeah,
at a church for the uh, the people who ran. I don't know if they're still involved. They ran the Portland Jazz Fest, but they used to put
oh,
on monthly concerts too, and we had a great audience there, as I recall.
yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
Anything that you would like to direct me towards?
Well, there's a record that I did. It's one of my more recent records. I did a record called Unheard Bird. And every year at Birdland during Charlie Parker's birthday week, for the last probably 7 or 8 years, I've done a Bird with Strings program. And a few years ago, I called these publishers, and they're based in California, Jazz Lines. I'll give them a boost because they're wonderful. They try to find the original scores. They'll contact all the estates of people that have passed, and so they're getting away from doing transcriptions and getting the original scores, copying out the parts, making corrections. So I called them after a few years, and I said, do you have anything that I don't know about? And they said, as a matter of fact, we just found about 20 arrangements that Charlie Parker commissioned for strings and never recorded. So these wonderful people copied all the parts for me, sent everything in time, and so we premiered it at Birdland, and we did 10 shows. We did a week there, and then went right into the studio afterwards and recorded it. Now,
Oh,
saying this, I'm going to ask you to play the one ringer I have on the record. I commissioned a friend of mine, a man named Mark Lopeman, who does a lot of big band and orchestral writing for me. And I asked him to write an arrangement for that ensemble of one of my favorite ballads ever. This one has nothing to do with Charlie Parker, but it's on the record, Unheard Bird. And it's Michel Legrand's You Must, and the Bergmans, You Must Believe in Spring.
okay, here we go.
Luckily for us,
Oh,
our
gosh.
poo-poo goes bye-bye.
Sorry about that. I just refuse to spend $20 a month for,
Listen, I know. Oh, there it is.
gorgeous.
Thanks.
Wow. That had so many gorgeous elements in it. Whew.
Thank you. That was recorded live in the studio too, with very little separation. That's the way I like to do it.
Wow.
I like to put that extra pressure on myself too, because if every instrument is bleeding into every other instrument, you really can't fix things, you know. So you have to really focus.
Yeah. Um, yeah, the arrangement when it started moving into a different time after, I guess you'd call it the introduction.
Yeah,
Oh, that was what an effect. Oh my gosh.
yeah.
Um,
He kind of loosely based that on an older recording I did of that same song on a record called "The Natural Touch" on Concord, which my running joke has always been, you know, Jerry Lewis was popular in France. I have Germany because that's the only time I came close to a Grammy. I won the German equivalent of one for that record when it came out. So,
wow.
so thanks, Germany. Thank you.
That's great. Well, I have two questions about that. One is, I was curious, if you, I mean, this is kind of a general question, but do you think about lyrics when you're soloing or playing?
Yes, always. Uh, you know, if I learn a song and it has lyrics, I always try to, first of all, I try to get a copy of the original sheet music because for all the musicians out there that learn from the real book and things like that, you're always getting someone else's version of the song. You know, they might have taken the chords from a Bill Evans record and nothing wrong with that. But then you're limiting yourself to just that. Whereas if you get the original sheet music, first of all, you're learning the melodies correctly, you're reading the lyrics, and you're getting, you know, you don't have to memorize the lyrics, but you have to, I think it's good to have a sense of what the whole song means. And that by the whole song, it's not just the melody, it's words and music. And that's not to say that you can't take a song written as a ballad and play it as an up-tempo song, but sometimes it's nice to go back and try to realize the original intent of the song. Just by example, in the last couple of years, and I recorded it this way on another newer record called Live at Mesro. But I've been playing All the Things You Are as a very slow ballad because it's got the most beautiful lyrics of all time, and I just try to remember what that song was originally about, you know. And that's kind of it's fun to do that. And again, a nice surprise sometimes is finding the verses to these songs too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
beautiful. Yeah, Ross Tompkins once gave me a book with, I forget who wrote it, but it was a book of about 20 or 30 intros. Uh, yeah, it was great. I kind of cherish that book. It's really,
yeah.
it's an old style book.
Mm.
Um, yeah, it reminds me of a story of Jerome Kern and Oscar Hammerstein. Um, and they were at a party and their wives were hanging out, with some people. And Jerome Kern's wife said, "Yeah, well, my husband wrote Old Man River." And Oscar Hammerson's wife said, "No, he didn't. He wrote da 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 da."
Yeah. Very true, actually. You know, that probably angered a lot of lyricists over the years because most of my fellow instrumentalists only credit the music composer.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's interesting. In fact, again, I took a lesson from watching Sinatra in concert. He always gave full credit to lyrics and music and even the arrangers before he performed a song.
yeah, yeah. I can believe that. Yeah, he honored people. Yeah,
Yeah, he was good.
yeah, yeah. He
Yeah.
was Um, okay, here's my $1 million question. Um, Phrasing with an orchestra or big band. So, I noticed your phrasing, and that first whole section seemed almost more classical, like kind of a straighter phrasing.
Mm.
And then the second part loosened up. And I think one reason why I didn't do a lot of big bands in my early years was because um, I I wasn't comfortable singing. I didn't know how to sing phrasing wise with the big band. Was I supposed to do it right, right on, or was I supposed to loosen it up? And I was just curious if you have perspectives about that, or maybe your perspectives were one thing when you were younger and then changed as you grew
Mm.
older.
Well, uh, an orchestra is trickier because there's a strange phenomenon with almost every orchestra in that, and this was a real chamber group, so I didn't have any of those restrictions. But if anybody watches a video of a classical orchestra, the conductor gives the downbeat, and then a microsecond later comes the attack from the orchestra. There's always a little bit of a time lag, which I never understood because you don't get that with a big band. Uh, they cut it off and bam, it's right there on the downbeat. So with an orchestra, I did an album of classical music years ago for Concord, and the conductor gave me some valuable advice with an orchestra, especially if there's no rhythm section involved. He said, you have to lead. You phrase the way you phrase, and we'll follow you. Because if you're trying to go back with us, it's just going to move everything further behind, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah,
Big bands now, here's the way I approach it. Now, there's two factors. The saxophone, if I play the saxophone with a big band, it's just a louder instrument than the clarinet. Clarinet and flute have a similar problem in cutting above a big band. So, frankly, you do need good amplification. If you look at photos or videos of Benny Goodman, even back in his heyday, he always had a separate microphone for himself. You just can't be heard otherwise. But so if I'm playing a phrase that the big band is also playing, or one section is playing, and I'm kind of playing it with them, I have to be right there, locked in with them. But I do feel like if, let's say, I'm playing the melody and they're playing things around me, I can have fun with it and play all around the time. As long as I know where those downbeats are, I can loosen it up a lot. So you have to really learn the arrangement and know when to lock in and when to free yourself up.
yeah, yeah. I think that's a really interesting um, subject to learn about and to experience. Um, anyway,
Yeah, but no one has ever asked me that question before. That's a really good question. I mean, it is something to think about, actually. And they never teach you those things either, really, in school. You just have to learn by doing.
yeah, yeah. hmm let's see. I have several other questions. Let's see. Lots of gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Um, this is Frederick again from Paris. Among amazing guitar players, Ken played double exposure with the great Canadian Ed Bickert. Oh, fantastic.
Mm.
Did he like him? Yeah,
Yeah.
he's one of my heroes too.
Ah.
Ed Bickert, did you like him?
Oh my God. Absolutely. First of all, he fascinated me because he played a solid body electric guitar and sounded like he didn't, And he was a very kind of self-effacing guy. Never played less than a great solo, and yeah, it was a thrill to get him on that record. And we played some gigs in Canada too. I worked in Toronto. There were a few nice clubs when I first came on the scene that don't exist anymore. But Ed and the bass player Don Thompson always played together, and Terry Clark, the drummer, who I still see now and then. And if I'm not mistaken, I have to say this, and this isn't some fake modesty. I never listen to my records. So I don't know who plays on what all the time, or which record this is on or that's on. It's not because I hate them. To me, it's like watching a home movie over and over. And also, I don't want to be hung up on something I did and think, oh, I should have done this instead. Or, I feel like that's a recording of where I was in that time and place. And now it's time to move forward. But my recollection is I had Ed Bickert and Terry Clark on the same record, because Terry was living in New York for a period, and then he wound up moving back to Toronto.
Yeah.
But Ed came down from Toronto to New York for that recording. That was my first record, Double Exposure, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, Ed Bickert. I am a big guitar fan. I always have been since college, and I recorded with some great guitar players, and Ted Green was one who Ed Bickert and Ted Green were kind of in the same universe,
Yeah.
And yeah, Ed Bickert, and he, as I recall, he worked with one or two very great singers who were maybe not the word on everybody's lips, but for professional musicians they were great.
Ooh.
I can't quite remember who, but yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, guitar and flute is a great combination. And I worked a lot with Charlie Bird over the years, and Charlie would get together with me on the road in hotel rooms, and he would bring out these flute and guitar duets, and I'd transpose them on clarinet, and we'd just go through those, because he had a really beautiful classical sound on guitar.
Oh, interesting. Okay, next question. Roland, hi Roland. Leon Redbone, Madonna, did you provide a solo or an introduction for them, or were you fully involved with the entire production of their music?
Okay, so Leon Redbone, I was totally involved. Traveled with him. I was the de facto arranger for a lot of the records that I'm on. In fact, well, this is not the best thing about Leon Redbone, but not atypical of some rock and roll performers, well, even people on our side of the fence. There's a song on one of the records called, I think it's called the 14th Street something or other, the 14th Street Blues or the 12th Street Blues. So he was just sitting in the studio playing a set of changes.
Yeah.
And I made up a complete melody on the tenor saxophone. Hey, Corky, keep it down over there. On the tenor saxophone. And it came out as an original song of Leon Redbone's, no credit to me. And he would pay us and what I would refer to as rock and roll money, which is they give you a flat fee for the record date, and you could be there from noon until midnight, So just because I didn't want to waste a lot of time, and I wasn't getting paid for the hours I was putting in, I would be the one that would say, okay, here's what we'll do on this. I'll overdub some woodwind stuff. Trumpet will come in over here. The rhythm section will enter here. And again, hate to say this because I loved so much about working with him, and he had a unique voice. He was actually an incredible guitarist, because we would spend some tours. It would just be him, a drummer, myself, and a cornet player with no bass. So he'd be providing the bass lines and doing this really masterful kind of picking on the guitar, like some old masters like Lonnie Johnson and Eddie Lang and people like that. And he was really into everybody that recorded before pretty much 1930. He loved all that music, and that was his cutoff. Fascinating guy. But the reason I quit was because, I don't care if you give, necessarily, you don't have to give me credit, but at least compensate me for doing all that work. And I got neither.
Yeah.
Now, Madonna, that's an interesting story. And I keep that on my website almost because I like to tell it, and I like people asking about it. So when she was married to Sean Penn, she wanted to do a old-fashioned musical, and it was called The Bloodhounds of Broadway, and it was based on Damon Runyon stories, who wrote Guys and Dolls and all that. But so she was going to go in with a quintet, and I was a part of this quintet, live in the studio and record a bunch of old standards. And I remember we attempted "I Cover the Waterfront" as one song, and this will not come as a surprise to a lot of people that listen to pop music now. She just didn't understand that those kinds of songs. That she was coming in at the wrong places. Just not a good experience. So the producer very diplomatically came in after an hour of this, and he said, "Look, we're having some technical issues with the microphone. Well, let's just lay down the instrumental tracks, and we'll put the vocals on later." And this was pre-Pro Tools and all that,
Yeah. Yeah.
So they would have to do a lot of work to edit her in the right places. So 8 months later, the movie, The Bloodhounds of Broadway, comes out. I went to the movie to see, what it turned into. No longer a musical. Everything was cut except about 30 seconds of there's us playing in a nightclub scene way off in the distance over some conversation, and that's it.
Wow.
And I don't even think she lists that, as one of her movies anymore, because that it disappeared without a trace, that movie.
Yeah. That is an interesting story.
Yeah, so that's my Madonna experience.
You didn't play with Zappa, right?
No, that would have been actually a daunting experience, because you listen to that music and the way he conducted too. He had his own weird methods of conducting that everybody in the band had to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah. You never did you?
No, the reason I ask is because Roland, who asked about Leon and Madonna, he's a big Zappa fan. He always asks me on this show. They sound like they would have worked with Zappa.
That would have been an interesting experience. Ruth Underwood was the flute player with Zappa, I remember.
Oh, okay.
She was on a bunch of those earlier records. But he was into Edgar, is it Varese? I never know how to pronounce his name. Varese.
Verace or Verace?
No, well, but he was into a lot of then contemporary classical musicians. So, his lyrics sometimes were a little bit, let's say, misogynistic, maybe. But if you just listen to the music, it's pretty astounding, some of it.
Yeah. Yeah, he was pretty much a genius, wasn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It seems like when I look at the information on you that you're really busy, that you play a lot. Is that true?
Yeah, I I made a decision. I have a kind of a low boredom threshold, which works for and against me because I never wanted to, let's say, do a Broadway show or take a steady teaching position. I love to teach, but I didn't want to do anything that locked me down. And probably for that reason too, I've done a lot of session work over the years, but I wasn't really one of the regular session musicians. So I've opted to make my money and, my fortunes in every way on the road, traveling. So you kind of, as it's like a blessing and a curse. We all love to play music, and the curse is the traveling part. It's not age. It is getting harder and harder for everybody. There's less options, less flight options, more cancellations and flight delays and all of that. And the promoters are still trying to pay us the same money they paid 20 years ago, frankly. So I have to work by necessity and by choice, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
a lot on the road.
Yeah.
The clubs, don't pay enough money I couldn't live in New York and just play the clubs here. There aren't enough of them, and they're not going to provide a living wage. So I do travel a lot. That was curbed, during the pandemic, and then I was diagnosed with cancer, and but I've been in remission for the last let's see, 2-3 years.
Fantastic.
So I can happily travel again, and I am. You know, this month is crazy. I'm all over the map in the United States. I'm got like a one nighter in California, then Florida, then somewhere in the Midwest, then back to California. In fact, I'm doing the Bird with Strings thing in at Stanford for their jazz festival. I'll
Cool.
be there. If anybody's listening to this out there, they can come and say hello.
When is that? I'll
That is
write-
July 6th. It's a Sunday. We're doing
at
those.
the Stanford Jazz Festival.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Okay. All right. Coming to LA at all?
I do periodically, but it's not on this go round. But there used to be there was a festival by, you remember this, by LAX that was around for years. And then
yeah.
there were, yeah. And there were a couple guys that ran what they call the jazz party. It was, but
Yeah.
they hired lots of great musicians in Newport Beach, California.
They're
And
still doing.
Well, they still do concerts. Yeah,
Yeah,
they don't do the
yeah.
festival anymore.
Right.
But I did that for all 20 years they did it. In fact, I took over from them as music director for a couple of years.
Oh. Wow.
So I come out there a lot. You know, again, this is, I don't mind talking about this stuff. Because people should know the other side of our profession. You know, it's harder to find clubs in LA that pay enough, frankly, to just come over and do that. So
Yeah.
you have to make it part of a tour.
Yeah.
So if I can do that, I can find some place in LA. There are a lot of more and more people doing house parties, house concerts.
Right.
And there's a gentleman who used to work for NASA, and he does some concerts in Long Beach. And I've worked with some of my favorite LA musicians, Tom Rainier and Josh Nelson on piano, and Katie Thoreau, the bass player,
Mhm.
and Joe LaBarbera has always been my first call on drums. So
I saw him last night. There's a singer who used to be an actress, Susan Krebs, and she has a small but actually nice size house that she holds Sunday afternoon concerts.
no,
And I don't know if you're aware of this trombone player, Joey Sellers.
I don't know him. No.
What a special human being he is.
Hmm.
And he's an amazing player. He's been
Wow.
teaching at Fullerton for a
Oh.
long, long time.
You just reminded me. I don't know how I forgot about this. I'll be at Fullerton College
Oh,
on this week. What am I
What?
thinking? I'll be there on the 8th. They've got a little jazz festival, and I'm guesting with a big band
oh my
at Fullerton
God.
College. Thanks for mentioning this.
I'm writing that down. The 8th at Fullerton College Jazz Festival.
Yeah.
You're only highlighted one song?
I have no idea. You know, I have to call my friend Bill Cunliffe because they've given me no information whatsoever about what I'm doing, and I leave on Wednesday, so I'm going to contact them and find out. I think I'm playing more than one song. I think we're doing some small group things too, in addition to playing with the big band.
That's fantastic.
So
Yeah, talk about a great musician too, Bill.
yes,
Yeah,
yep,
great musician. But I saw Joe because there's a beautiful drummer here, Kendall Kay, who's from
yes. Oh,
South Africa.
yes, and a great person, really nice guy too.
Yeah, so he and Joey and this beautiful young bass player who had studied and mentored under Luther Hughes.
Oh,
This guy David, I don't remember his last name, but Joey he's it's not really avant-garde. I guess you could just call it creative music. There's, I don't know, the genres are sometimes, whatever, they kind of melt into each other.
yeah.
But his music is really good, and I think even for the layman can listen and be kind of amused. First of all, the songs are relatively short, and Joey is very melodic in his songwriting and his soloing. He's a really great trombone player.
Well, I'm going to look him up afterwards. I always thought Ornette Coleman was a very melodic player.
Yeah.
I did. You know, if you just look at if you looked at a transcription of his solos, I mean, there's a real flow to them and an arc to his solos. It's not just random notes.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
I think, you know, obviously, you know, you have trouble like I do categorizing things. It's always the jazz critics that I guess they have to do this because they have to find some way of describing it. But they love to put us in boxes. You know, this person is this person is that. But as you said, it all flows into everything else. It's, you know, we're in 2025, so you'd have to have, you know, stayed in a dungeon for your whole life to not be influenced by everything, you know, including free jazz and post-country jazz, you know, in one way or another.
I remember one time, this just always sticks in my mind. So I was at a gig and we were jazz players and we played a country tune and somebody came up and said, "Could we hear a country tune?"
Oh,
I
oh
thought,
yeah.
oh, okay, I get it.
Oh
Reminded them
boy.
of country, but
Yeah. Oh, I love those comments.
that's pretty funny.
I have to tell you one Joe LaBarbera story because I don't know anybody that doesn't love Joe LaBarbera. You know,
Yeah.
honestly, he was like Louis Bellson was the same way. Like
What a guy. Oh my God.
everybody loves him. So Joe LaBarbera, I do this jazz cruise every year, and Joe LaBarbera was on one year, and he was playing in a quartet that I put together, and so I'm introducing all the people in the band, and I'm saying, "Oh, this person is one of the most wonderful piano players and one of my favorite bass players." And then I said, and on drums, Joe LaBarbera. What an asshole! Brief pause, and then everybody erupted into laughter because they all knew, you know.
That's
And
funny.
he was laughing. The only downside was for the rest of the week, people were coming up to him and repeating that to him. So,
That's so funny.
but he and I go way back, and he's such a creative drummer.
Oh God, yeah, he's really a gorgeous artist, human being.
Yeah.
He actually, I recently found out I'm friends with Norma Winstone, the singer
Oh,
from England,
sure.
and she was telling me that she was going to Canada soon with Joe, and so
Oh,
last night I
nice.
was able to talk about that, and yeah, so there's one other player, but I don't know him. He's German. I'm
Hmm.
not sure even what he plays, but anyway, they're like leaving this week also.
Wow, that should be
Yeah.
nice. I worked with her one time only, and it was so long ago. I'm sure she wouldn't remember, but
Yeah.
somewhere in England, it was at a festival, and the promoter put us together. And I recall it as being a great experience. At least it was for
She's
me.
great. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I find it really interesting that England adopted her as their sweetheart because she's subtle. You know,
Yeah.
she's not a singer like right out there in your face. Although she can be, you know, one solid package out there, but usually it's much more subtle with her.
I
But
agree with you. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
she's a really very cool person.
Hmm.
Okay, so let's see. One more. Here's a question for both of you. When you listen to a piece of music, do you do it passively or are you always analyzing, trying to figure out the changes and thinking, I would sing or play this way on this section? That's a good question, Roland. What do you think?
Well, for me, both, you know, sometimes I listen to music while I'm doing something else, but usually I think this is a problem built into our society now, you know, with
Yeah.
where music is so available and you don't have to really pay anything for it. So it's become a functional thing, you know, for so many people, it's just while you're doing something else, the music is on.
Yeah.
And I have to remind, if I do a master class or something like that, I remind the students, you know, you need to sit in front of a set of speakers and, you know, try to listen to a record as an experience, you know, because people spend so much time planning the sequencing of the tracks and trying to tell a little story. And when I listen to a record, I try to listen to each instrument as a learning thing. Like I don't just focus on my own instruments. I'll listen to the bass player, I'll listen to the drummer, the piano player. What are they doing? You know, so that for me is a form of practicing, and I do that
Huh.
non-passive listening as much as I do practicing. Actually,
That's interesting. I've never heard
what
it
about
put
you?
that
What's
way. Well, yeah, I mean, over the years, it really has changed. I mean, I remember even just, not many years ago, I don't know, 8 years, 7 years ago, I used to have a 6 CD player in my kitchen. So I would listen to 6 CDs for 2 weeks. I was really deeply and absorbed in the music and the, as you say, like what song was coming next, and and I could listen like that. I mean, I had a boyfriend once. We used to. I know people don't believe this, but it was true. We used to lie on the floor separately and listen to the music. Just listen in the dark.
yeah,
Wow, that was an amazing experience.
yeah,
Now, I mean, I like you. I have a lot of CDs that I mean, I've tried to weed out my CDs, but there are some CDs that I just can't get rid of, and some friends' CDs, and just I don't know when I think I'm going to listen to all of them, but
yeah,
and and I try and put in a little bit of time. It's really a different time, and
yeah.
somebody this week even said he remembered listening parties where you got a few people over, you put on a record, you didn't talk until one side
Right.
was over.
Yeah.
Then you may, talk about stuff. As a matter of fact, in Seattle, there's a Japanese place called Shibuya that it's literally 2 rooms. One is the bar, and one is a listening room where
Mm.
they listen to classic records, whatever genre, from the beginning to the end. And they don't drink, they don't smoke, they nothing. It's just listening.
Mm. Well, Japan has a tradition of what they call jazz record bars, and they're small bars, not like Seattle because they would have the space, but in Japan, even the clubs are kind of small,
Very, yeah.
but the bars, these jazz record bars, it's one room, and the person who owns the bar is always a big jazz record collector, and it's his own collection, usually in typical Japanese collectors, everything's in mint condition.
Yeah.
And you look at the spines of the records behind him and you request a record and everybody listens to it.
Yeah.
It's a really fun thing to do.
It
Uh,
is great.
yeah, I was gonna. Oh, I like to listen to all kinds of music too, and uh, from childhood, I was always into the Beatles, and I still am. In fact, I'm kind of a crazy collector of session tapes and outtakes and videos. I have more footage than they even showed in that 8-hour version of Let It Be that
Ah,
Peter Jackson put together. But anyway, I just 2 days ago, I I listened to the Abbey Road record in its entirety again, just doing that. And what an experience, because there's talk about an arc. That whole record takes you it's a story, it takes you on a trip
yeah.
from beginning to end. And it's so great, and it still sounds great too. And so I just want to remind people, that's a whole experience that they're missing out on if they don't do that anymore.
Yeah. So true. So true. Um, let's see. Um, yeah, did that. Let's see. Joyce is glad you're in remission and
Oh,
well and strong enough and able to travel again.
well, thank you. Thanks. That's very nice of you. Really.
Um, let's see. Yeah, Joyce. Norma Winstone's lyrics are really beautiful. She is really good. She and I invited her to sing on this version of Hippolytville, which was a John Abercrombie song that I had written lyrics for when I was in college. And I was in England recording, and she, interestingly enough, she, over the years, she had had a gig that was across the hall from a gig of John Abercrombie's, and he would play that song every night. So she really got to know it and love it. So it was really fun. We have actually a similar sound. I'll send you a copy of that song.
I'd love to hear it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
You just remind me of something in a strange roundabout way. I worked a lot over the years with Carol Sloan.
Oh,
And I thought she was, talk about underrated performer,
yeah, I agree.
And I loved her. She was a great person to hang with and work with. And so I played on 2 or 3 of her records, and there's one, actually, if you play another selection, you might play this. She surprised me. 'Cause she was like me. She was a 1 or 2 take person. Everybody's in the studio together.
Yeah.
Whatever happens, happens. So she said, let's do Just Squeeze Me, But Please Don't Tease Me, the Duke Ellington song. And she said, and you're going to sing it. And I said, but I don't even know the lyrics by heart, And she said, well, here they are. And then she calls out to the engineer in the booth. I didn't have time to think about it. And it's like, bam. And we recorded it. 1 take. Luckily, all I do is sing harmony with her, so I can kind of get away with it. Because you really don't want to hear me sing, but I do a passable harmony version on that with her. And that's the 1 take. That's it. But that was Carol. She had that joy about her.
I see that, and I see that Brad Hatfield was part of that project.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So he's old friend of mine. His brother, Mike, who now lives in San Francisco, he and I had a group at Berkeley.
Oh, wow.
And he was playing vibes at that time.
Geez. Truly a small world.
Yeah, very small world. Oh, yeah. Who introduced me to her was Rebecca Paris. Did you ever?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, she was great. Yeah, another underrated vocalist.
Yeah, she was incredible. She actually and I were friends in high school, I guess. She was a year older than me, and we were in vocal groups together. But her name was Rebecca. No, I'm sorry. Her name was Rebecca Peplowski.
Okay.
And then
that's why she was so good. It's the ski at the end.
Exactly. But okay, sorry. Actually, I found it right here.
Ah.
Recreate any image you see on the internet.
Yes.
Yes.
But please don't. Let's start it from the top.
Treat me sweet and gentle when you say goodnight. Just squeeze me, but please don't tease me. I get sentimental when you hold me tight. Just squeeze me, but please don't tease me. Missing you since you went away, singing the blues away each day, counting the nights and waiting for you. I'm in the mood to let you know I never knew I loved you so. Please say you love me too. Boy, when I get this feeling, I'm in ecstasy. So squeeze me, but please don't tease me. Missing you since you went away, singing the blues away each day, counting the nights and waiting for you. I'm in the mood to let you know I never knew I loved you so. Please say you love me too.
I've never danced horizontally before.
When I get this feeling, I'm in ecstasy. So squeeze me, but please don't tease me. So squeeze me, but please don't tease me.
That is a clarinet in my pocket, and I am happy to see you.
Squeeze me, but please don't. I like it like this.
What will my wife say? Ah, the hell with it. Squeeze me and tease me.
I will. I will. Like this?
If we were any closer, we'd be behind each other. You devil, you.
What fun.
Yeah, that was Carol. Sorry, Corky's getting in the picture now, but yeah, there's a documentary floating around now on her that so captures her.
Really?
And if people Google that, I'm sure they'll be able to find it. But to my regret, the whole documentary revolves around her coming out of. She had some illnesses and late in life, and wasn't performing that much. And she had a week at Birdland booked, and she asked me to do it, and I didn't know that there was a documentary involved. Not that would have, but I had a couple gigs I couldn't get out of, so I missed that thing. And I think that was her last gig.
Oh.
And Scott Hamilton did it in my place as a guest with her. But boy, she was a great singer, and again, just wonderful person to be around. Such a great musician, and you probably know. I mean, she was married to Jimmy Rolls for a long time.
You know what? I don't think I knew that.
Okay, well, yeah. So, and if
Wow.
people don't know Jimmy Rolls, they should check him out, because that was he was one of the greatest piano players ever.
Oh, yeah.
It was a stormy relationship, and they talk about this in the documentary, but it was a creative partnership in many ways, though.
Wow, that's I definitely have to see that. I mean, Jimmy Rolls, he was around when I was here, and when I first was here, and his daughter Stacy, really great trumpet and flugelhorn player. And
Yes.
and Jimmy, did you ever hear that that live hijacked version in the studio of him and Billie Holiday?
Yes, that's fantastic. Yeah.
Incredible. And I talked to him about that, and he said he was annoyed about that because
Oh, really?
it was one of those things that just popped up that he didn't get any money for or anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was really something. For those of you listening who don't know about that, Jimmy was Billie's pianist, at least some of the time. They were in the studio. I forget what song stood out, but anyway, she was learning something. Let's say it was Just Friends or something. And first you would hear her talking like,
Yeah, right.
like really, not great. And then she would go, Just Friends, just beautiful. Like, oh my God. Yeah, that was a really cool thing to listen to.
Yeah, and it's kind of a masterclass in teaching someone a song too.
Mm-hmm.
Listening to him, go through these things.
Yeah.
There's also, speaking of things floating around, he wrote an autobiography that he then didn't want published and it's got a lot of his drawings. He did a lot of really funny drawings, caricatures, and he didn't want to publish because it was he did it during his drinking years, and he felt like he might have said some unkind things about people, which he really doesn't. I have a copy of it somewhere, and it's very funny and interesting. And there's his drawings. He was very close with George Shearing, and they could joke around like this. So he drew a picture of George Shearing at the piano, and George is facing the wrong way on the piano bench, away from the keyboard. because he knew it would get back to George, and George would laugh at that. George always made jokes about his own, lack of being able to his blindness.
Yeah.
George had a great sense of humor about that stuff.
I remember the first time I saw George. It was in a beautiful theater somewhere in LA. And Ron, okay, what was Ron's last name? Guitar. Ron, he was one of those kind of unsung hero guys,
Oh, not
really.
Ron Eschete.
No,
No.
it was Ron. Oh my gosh. Well, I can't remember. It was an Italian name.
Hmm.
Anthony. Ron Anthony?
Oh,
Yeah.
that rings a bell. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was playing with him. I can't remember who else, but again, once again, that music was this music that I had kind of glommed onto through my younger years. It was this, George, he was this high quality. I don't know, I'm not even sure of the words to put with it, but for me, it was high quality respect, both from him and from me to him, and
Hmm.
just this beautiful, high quality creation. Like you too. I'm just honored to talk to you because this what I'm describing, you also present. It's just it's beautiful. It's a quality that is. I keep putting it up here because that's what I feel. I don't feel it down here. I feel it high, and just beautiful. As I was saying before, it speaks to the listener on a few different levels.
Well, thank you.
Whether, yeah.
Look, if I don't throw compliments my own way ever, but I do try to be honest when I play. That's all. I just
Yeah.
try to be myself, no matter what I do.
Yeah.
So that I can say about myself. So, uh, if you get that from my music, then I feel like I've accomplished something.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
You have accomplished something.
Well, thank you, thank you.
Speaking of that, do you have any kind of bucket list things that you would like to do?
You know, yeah. There's always things. I have just a general desire to always play with people that are new to me and also experiences that are new. So I can't name a specific thing, but it might happen tomorrow that somebody calls me up and says, would you like to do a concert with me? And it would be somebody that I would never think to perform with. Those are my kind of golden moments. That kind of thing. And I do like to push myself. For example, over the years, I've done some challenging classical music over the years, which I don't think anybody thinks of me in that way, but it means a lot to me because I don't take it lightly. I don't try to be this dilettante that, oh, no, I'm playing classical, now I'm playing jazz. I really work hard if I have to do something like that and really prepare. I did, for example, this chamber music festival in Oregon for 7 or 8 years, and we performed everything there. But the highlight for me was doing Darius Milhaud's Quartet for the End of Time, which he kind of started in the concentration camps, and uh, it's that heavy of a piece. You can hear it, and it's a very emotional piece to play.
Yeah.
And one of the movements is an unaccompanied clarinet solo that's supposed to mimic the sounds of the birds, which he could hear outside, which gave him some hope. And it, uh, it's a hard piece to play, and it's hard emotionally to play too. But I'm proud of having accomplished things like that. And so my bucket list is you know just being open to all kinds of possibilities like that, and trying things that and never saying no to something just because I think it would be a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. You brought to mind, wait a minute. I'm writing my notes, which some of them I look at and some of them
Yeah.
kind of go away.
Yeah.
But speaking of my notes, see this book? This
Yes.
has all my notes that I've collected for a long time. I get into these moods of organization, right? So I would spend 2 weeks putting all my notes into these categories
Oh,
on the computer, and then I don't look at it. But
well,
that's okay.
yeah, you're still
So
doing better than me. I have a desk that's like this, heaped up with papers, and I I have a general idea where everything is, but if I'm, every if I'm specifically looking for something, then I can never find it.
oh yeah,
So
well,
yeah, but you've got that organized at least. So
I know, and even though I don't look at it right now, it's okay because I realized over the years it doesn't really matter. Like, let's say you read the self-help book and it's very inspiring. You put in 2 weeks of work on it, and then you forget it.
mm,
It doesn't really matter because that kind of urge of action and excitement is what matters.
yeah, right.
That really, it adds to you, and that's fine, you know. But you made me think of David Amram. Are you
Oh
friends with him?
yes, in fact, uh, just about 3 months ago, we did a session together for this Brazilian
Oh,
guitarist, a guy named Manu Lafer, who comes over to New York about 6 times a year and does these crazy sessions. He's into all kinds of music, and David and I played together on a couple songs. And it's funny you mentioned this, because I was just going through my computer files are as disorganized as everything else. So I found somebody had uh, taken their camera and captured a few moments of us together in the studio, and I'm going to post that either tonight or
oh,
tomorrow on all the little social media things. But talk about a creative force. This guy has done every kind of music under the sky, and he's such a positive person too, and
yeah.
you know he's amazing. You I'm sure you've done something with him over the years, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, interviewed him. I hung out with him in New York a few years ago, and from time to time we call. He's Yeah, he's an amazing human. Yeah.
He is, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I have to say, people watching this, look him up,
Yeah.
AMRAM, because you'll be astonished at the things he's done.
Yeah, and I think he's over 90
I
now.
think you're right.
Yeah,
And he
and
played the
he's
penny
still,
whistle on this session.
I believe it because he mentioned that a lot. The thing about him is too, it's probably like you're going to be doing too. You know, like I'll talk to him and he just came back from like an all night hang
Yeah.
at a folk festival where he was playing, jamming and and
Yeah.
then he has another gig tomorrow or it's like dang. And also I just remember this story because a lot of people say things like this, but I just remembered this one. He went to see Charlie Parker when he wasn't really like actively super busy at that moment. He was
Mm.
young, and and he played the what was it? The French horn, right? And
Yes.
and he went to and they were hanging out during the break, and Mingus came by, and Charlie said, "You should use this guy on French horn." And Mingus said, "Oh, what are you doing? This coming month because I'm
Mm.
going on the road to Europe." And that's how it happened,
Wow.
And then David was kind of the French horn player on a lot of that old jazz
Yeah. It's a,
recording.
he pops up in everywhere, folk records, you
Yeah,
name it. It's pretty amazing career.
yeah,
And as you've pointed out, I mean, he's got boundless energy.
yeah.
I don't know where it comes from. It's incredible.
Well, I think he shares your point of view of the bucket list.
Yeah.
He's very open and creative, and he's quite loving. He
Mm,
wants to
he
know
is.
what your good points are. And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, he's really cool. Um, yeah. When else did I write down something? Oh yeah, I can't remember the name of the hall. When you spoke about this composer that was beautiful that wrote, I guess wrote in the camps some.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
Darius Mio.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's another man whose name slips my mind right now. He's they have a beautiful hall in a school downtown, a music. It's a music school downtown. It's kind of somewhat well known.
Oh,
Anyway, it
downtown
was
LA.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's right across from Disney Hall.
Oh,
Blah. Roland, you probably know. Oh, Roland said David was born in 1930. He'll be 95 this year.
oh boy. Wow.
Anyway, and Joyce, yeah, knows him too. Anyway, this hall, I'm so sorry. And there was a book actually that this man wrote too. He was in the camps. He was already a conductor, and the prisoners created an orchestra, and the instruments were anything they found on the ground, and they would conduct kind of secret orchestra playing of his pieces. Then he got out when the forces, the armed forces cleaned that up, and then he went to Japan, I guess, and he was caught again
Oh my God.
and in a prisoner camp. Then he got out of that, he came back, and so they have a hall that is dedicated to him. He may have actually, created that hall himself. But yeah, great, amazing story, and what was so beautiful about that book was he was not a victim in the book. It was just what it was, kind of like there's a beautiful Black author, a woman, her name is on the tip of my brain. She was actually the first woman publisher and Black. Oh gosh, I can't remember her name. But anyway, it's not about me as a victim. It's about what's happening.
Yeah.
It's just what's happening. It's the
Yeah.
truth, And yeah, there's hard times, and then there's joy, and
Yeah.
something Morrison.
Oh, Toni Morrison.
Yes, Toni Morrison.
Yeah.
So I really love her writing because of that as well. It's not
But-
victim.
Right. And there's kind of a side lesson in all of this, and to remind people of the true healing powers of the arts in general, and why it's more important than ever, to support the arts of any kind, writing and dancing, painting, music, because God knows we're losing all the, funding for it, especially here.
Yeah.
But as it becomes more disposable in a sense to the general public, I think we just need to remind ourselves how important it is and how healing it can be, and you can use it as a tool in a sense to get yourself out of certain things, not completely, but it certainly heals your soul,
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's really important to have it. And I can say that, it's very obvious right now in these times, but over these last few years, because I started this Noontime Hang the day that the pandemic started, and I've been a musician since I was born, but I was so impressed by how much creativity is going on all over the planet, and I really feel like we balance out the planet. Without us, and it's not just music, but especially in music, we balance out the planet. Without us, it would just be a spinning ball of dirt,
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And during the pandemic, it's interesting how many musicians found some way to stay creative. You told me what you did. I did a streaming show for I think 48 weeks in a row, and we never. I said again, I wanted to push myself, so we had a goal of never repeating a song for the whole 48 weeks, and we didn't. And I worked like crazy because I also gave an introduction to all these songs where I talked about the songwriters and interesting things about the songs, and so it was. We put a lot of work into those shows. they should still be up on my Facebook Meta site, but
Yeah.
who knows? They've changed that site over and over. But
And they're saying that they're going to, I don't even know if this is true, delete videos on Facebook.
yeah, I saw that.
But yeah, I think I might have seen one of those shows.
Hmm.
Which year was it? Was it
So
towards the beginning of the pandemic?
I'm going to say it was. So the pandemic hit in 2020. I would say it started probably towards the end of 2020 and then ended towards the end of 2021. And I called it In the Moment because that's what it was. Yeah, we had a person filming us. I rented a studio out every month, and again we did everything live. So we did everything just one take, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
I gave everybody lead sheets to all these songs that were new to them and some new to me too. So
That's great. I love it. I'm going to go look for that.
uh,
Well, Ken, thank you so much for spending 2 hours of your beautiful, valuable time. And it's been such a pleasure to hang with you.
yeah, likewise. It's so nice talking to you, and like all really creative musicians. These wind up being the best interviews because you've asked half of what you've asked me. Really interesting question nobody has ever asked before. So
Yeah.
it's fun for me, and it's nice to hear some things about your life that I didn't know about too.
Yeah. Well, this week I probably won't come out to your festival in Fullerton
Fullerton.
because I have kind of a squished week. I'm going to Japan on Monday,
Oh,
next Monday. So, but I hope you remember if you do come to let me know, and
I will.
not only come hear you. And by the way, there's a really nice home venue in LA called the G Spot.
Ah,
But this guy is really funny. His name is Alan Goldman, and
ah,
he's funny. He's a musician, and of course, he had to call the place the G
that's
Spot.
great.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, if you especially the further out, if you knew you were coming, I
Hmm.
could probably arrange a gig for you there. And so he bought it in the old days when it was cheap. It's kind of near downtown. He's a bachelor. He added on this incredible room that
Hmm.
holds 60 to 70 audience. He has a gorgeous 10-foot grand piano that just
Wow.
restrung. He has a bar,
Wow.
important for people.
Yeah. Well, it sounds wonderful. Everything about it
Anyway,
sounds good so far.
yeah, it's really
Yeah.
nice. He doesn't even take any money for it.
Mm.
He tunes the piano.
Yeah.
It's like, so anyway, if you think about that, or
Yeah.
your booker person thinks about that, let me know if you want to come
That
down.
Booker person would be me. So
Oh, cool, even better.
let's stay in touch. I'd love to have some of those contacts. I don't want to keep everybody I know, but it does seem like a lot of these house parties are replacing the clubs in a way.
Yeah.
But that's fine
Well,
as
the
long as there's a
clubs,
place to play.
well, also you got to, the clubs, not only the pandemic, really hurt a lot of clubs, but there's how many clubs can there be in a town with a shitload of musicians?
Right.
Uh, I don't know if you ever heard of the Blue Whale or played
Oh,
there.
sure. Yeah.
Well, so he's actually coming back.
Oh, really?
He got a place in Atwater, which is between Burbank and Glendale, and it's kind of huge. It's like a sound stage.
Wow.
I think it had already been a place of recording and performances that they had split up the rooms. Anyway, so he's doing some work on it in June, and then he figures he might be up and running in September. So that's, that'll be another place.
Oh,
And
great.
actually, the Blue Note is coming here. It's moving here in June.
Wow. Well, that's all. Those are all good signs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well,
anyway, listen, have a great day and
thanks.
great week, and it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, likewise. Really nice talking to you, and really fun. Just the 2 hours just zipped by. Really, it's really. Thanks for asking me.
Oh, thank you. Stay healthy, man.
I'm planning on that.
Okay.
Corky's helping me.
I can
Actually.
believe that.
Yeah.
Okay, Ken.
All right. You take care and let's stay in touch, please.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.